Today's daf is daf Chav Beis, and we got up to Vitana Kama, and we're trying to figure out how to work out the Tanakama and his derivation. V'chimiacha denafkalon mi umolak vehiktir. Now, the Tanakama is of the opinion that in the case of an olas a ha'of, you have to do a complete cut of the two simonim, and that's called havdalah. And he learns it from this pasuk vehiktir that compares malika to aktorah, just like in aktorah, you maktir the head separately from the goof of the bird. So too the malika has to separate the head from the body of the bird. So now, and we hinted at this in yesterday's class, that vekrivu lamali, right? We had the extra vav in the word vekrivo, which was a mute, and came to exclude olas ha'of from chatas ha'of. And the contrast is as follows, that in chatas ha'of, you don't have to sever the two simonim, but in olas ha'of you do. So why do I need both the drasha of umolak vehiktir and vehikrivo? And the Gemara says that ila vehikrivo havamina, I would have said, my kamishpat, right? In the parasha of Olas Ha'of, the Torah says kamishpat, and we might have suggested that kamishpat chatas ha'of, that the Torah is creating an analogy between Olas Ha'of and chatas ha'of. And that would lead us to the conclusion that you would have to suffice with rov simonim, and you would not have to sever the simonim. On the other hand, imishum umolak vehiktir. Now, umolak vehiktir could teach me a number of different possible halachas. We want to derive from umolak vehiktir that you need a total separation between the head and the body. In the case of olas ha'of, and if that be the case, then we could not use kamishpat to equate olas ha'of with chatas ha'of. But the answer is going to be that now we have another possible halacha that's derived from a molak vehiktir. Havamina, which halacha would we be derived from the equation between malika and haktorah? Ma haktor barosh shel mizbeach. The burning of the bird has to be done on the top of the mizbeach. Af malika barosh shel mizbeach. And if that be the case, then we no longer have umolak vehiktir to teach me that there has to be a separate havdalah and an absolute cutting. And therefore, I would not know whether to break up the equation between olas ha'of and chatas ha'of that was derived from the word kamishpat. Is drosh bei nami ha. So now I'm going to justify why the Torah needs that miyut of vehikrivo, which was a miyut that excludes olas ha'of from that analogy to chatas ha'of, and we'll use that analogy for other dinim. But as far as the law of complete separation, then we're going to say that vikrivo is a miyut to exclude olas ha'of, and although the equation taktorah could not be sufficient, because for that we would use it to teach me about Rosh Hashanah, that the Malik has to be done Rosh Hashanah, but now we have Vakrivo to contrast Olas Ha'of with Chatas Ha'of and teach me that in Olas Ha'of you need a complete separation. Okay. Now, the Gemara asks the following question. We have that pasuk kamishpat, which generates an equation between now again we can't use it for the equation between olas ha'of and chatas ha'of because we have vikrivo as a miyut. So we're going to use it now to go back to an earlier part of the parasha, which is a behemas chatas, meaning an animal chatas. And then Kamishpat is telling me a number of different dinim that apply to olas ha'of that are derived from the equation to behemas ha'of. And we had laws about using your right hand, and it has to be during the day, and what else? And oh yeah, you can't buy the carbon from most meiser sheni of pigeon. And here we go through it one by one. Chatas behema eino ba ela min achulin. And the first law that we derive from Kamishpat to apply to Olas Ha'of is that you cannot use Mos Meiser Sheni to purchase a behemo for Chatos and an oaf for Ola. Minolan, how do we know that in behemo itself you can't use the money that was redemption money from Meiser Sheni? So we emphasize now the word lo, which means that it's his own private ownership, which means that he takes money from his bank account in order to purchase the cow for the chatos, and that excludes lo mishal tzibur, lo mishal maser, because maser is mamon gavoa. Bayom. Now, why do we need an equation to Chatas behema to teach you that an olas ha'of also requires yom? The Gemara says, "Mi biyom tzavoso nafka." Who needs it? Who needs to derive it from behema when the Torah says the word bayom in the context of olas ha'of? So I know that olas ha'of has to be biyom. Kidi nazba. It's only once he's listing all the halachas that are equal and similar to between chatus behema and olas ha'of, so he adds yom. Yada yamanis. Why do I need to derive the use of the right hand in olas ha'of from chatus behema? Midirabba bar Bachanan afka. I could derive it from Amar bar Bachanan bar Bishima. Kol makom shenemar etzba o kahuna ena el yamin. And therefore, when it says Vakrivoa Kohen, which is referring to the Olas Ha'of, then kahuna automatically means the right hand. Oh, so he says V'idach, but not everybody agrees that once you have the word kahuna, automatically it means that you use the right hand, because Rabbi Shimon holds that kahuna boy etzba. It's not enough that the Torah use the word kahuna, like it says here, ve'krivoa kohen. You also need to find in the pasuk etzba. If you have etzba, lo boy kahuna. When it says etzba, then automatically you know that it requires the right hand, even if you don't have the word kahuna, but the word kahuna alone would not be sufficient. And therefore, we need to derive yamin in olas ha'of from the equation of kamishpat to chatas behem. V'tanakama Rabbi Elazar ben Reb Shimon mimul ha'oref minolon. Just give me a second. What's the cheshbon here? That Rabbi Shmuel was the one who used. He was the third Tana. He used the pasuk hamishpat to teach me that Malikas Olas ha'of has to be done with the orif, to the nape, by equating it with chatas ha'of. Now the Tanakama and Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon, they use kamishpat for another different equation. So how do they know mimul ha'oref? Gemiri, it's a hilchasa gemirale, malika mi malika, that we should equate one malika with another malika. And since in the case of a chatas ha'of, we know that you have to have min ha'oref, because the Torah says keneged ha'oref explicitly with regard to chatas ha'of. Therefore, we derive malika malika, that malika has to be mina oref, just like it has to be mina oref in the case of chatas ha'of, so too in the case of olas ha'of. Okay then, so that's a hashlama to complete what we did until now on Daf Chafalf. Now we start really the Daf for today. Now, there's something called a carbon olev v'yored, which we've discussed on many occasions. And in the cases where you chayav a carbon olev v'yored, then the Torah requires, if you're wealthy enough, that you bring a kiv, so you bring an animal. But if you cannot afford it, then you bring birds. And the Torah says it's either Torim or Bnei Yonah. So we have to memorize the following. Put it up on the whiteboard that Torim are turtle doves in English, and Yonah is a dove. So we have turtle doves. I'm sorry, Yonah is called a pigeon. My mistake. Yeah. Now, the difference between Bnei Yonah pigeons and Torim, which are turtle doves, is from one extreme to the other. They're exact opposites of each other as far as the age of the bird. And we'll soon see that the age of the bird could be determined by what's called hatzava, meaning when it becomes yellow. So I don't want to jump too far ahead of myself. But in any event, the Mishnah is going to deal now with the following. Kosher b'torim, posel b'bnei Yonah. Kosher b'bnei Yonah, posel b'torim. So these are two opposites of each other. And what's common to both of them is what's called tchilas hatzihuv, when the bird's feathers. Okay, that's a machlokas. But anyway, according to one sheet, it's when the bird's feathers turn yellow, then it doesn't fit into either category. That's excluded both in Torim and in Bnei Yonah. And we'll explain as we go through the Gemara. Tan Rabbanan. Torim gedolim ksherim and ketanim psulim. Bnei Yonah ketanim ksherim, gedolim psulim. So again, if you need a memory device for this, I found one on my own, which I think is very helpful for me anyway, that it always says in the pasuk Bnei Yonah. And the word Bnei refers to young, like a child. So the Yonah, the pigeon, has to be young. And by contrast, the Torim, the turtle doves, have to be old. So the age of a turtle dove is unacceptable in the case of a Yonah, and vice versa. Tana Rabbana, we learned in a brisa, Torim gedolim v'lo ketanim. That for Torim, turtle doves, we need mature turtle doves, not young ones. That means that if it's younger than yellowing, which is called tzihuv, then it's possible for Torim, because Torim are the more mature birds, the turtle doves. And now the Brisa goes on and explains why I need the Torah to spell this out. What would I have thought if we didn't know that Torim were Gdolim? And that's called din. Din means a kal v'chomer. And we're going to go through now a kal v'chomer. And the kal v'chomer will always show you that if in the case, for example, of B'nai Yonah, you could use a young pigeon, then how much more so we would think that in the case of Torim, you could use a young turtle dove. And that's called Sheyachol V'lo Dinhu.